Mark in the count. The swing arm now coming back as our countdown continues.
Good afternoon if you are on the West Coast. Good evening if you're on the East Coast, like these folks are next to me. We've got Steph Delatour from Dtour Customs over on the East Coast. Where exactly on the East Coast, Steph?
New York, baby. New York.
There you go. New York. And then over there, Owen, I actually don't know where you're based. Where are you at, sir?
I'm right in Sacramento, actually, now.
In Sac. Okay, so you're like local home team. From basically where we are going to be doing this Mythic Meetup, that if you were here yesterday or you've heard me last week start to talk about it, I and a bunch of other folks are putting together this year's, it's the third annual West Coast Mythic Meetup, I should say, up in the Sacramento area. And so, Owen, you've actually been working on it for the last 2 years now with Iz and folks, right?
Yeah, I guess I was there all 3 years. I just moved to Sacramento 3 years ago. So I think the first one, I had just moved here. So everything was new to me.
I was there too. And then, I was telling Nate, I was a little bit shy about it because it's like, oh man, I don't know anybody. And then, I go and it's like everyone's super warm and friendly, which is a thing that I hear happens a lot at these sort of mythic events. And then went back again last year. It was the same deal. And this year I was like, you know what? I want to help out and see where we can grow this thing after my first experience at LegionsCon, where I got to actually meet this guy face to face. I was telling him earlier, he enabled me to buy some toys that I hadn't otherwise planned on buying. As one does, as one does at these things. But anyway, so again, if you read the thumbnail or even the description, what we're trying to do is kind of learn from our folks who do get a chance to see the Four Horsemen studios at a bunch of these local shows throughout the year, in between LegionsCon, and sort of like see their fellow Legions fans in real life multiple points throughout the year. And this is us trying to figure out like, what's that like? And, build it up over here. So we're going to rely on Steph a little bit to share his experience as both a fan, as a customizer, as a vendor, as a, person in the community. And then we'll share a little bit about where Owen and I are coming from. So before that, let's say hello to the folks that have come to hang out live. We've got Blake, aka Recon Rage. He says, we are privileged to get 2 live streams in the same weekend. Oh, man. Well, thank you. I'm glad you still came back and weren't bored after last time. What's up, Blake? Wholesome Warlock. What's going on, Jordan? Hello. Purple. We got Thanos Copter. Hello, with the wrench, helping out with the links throughout the show. Appreciate you, Thanos. And he'll also be driving up from sort of Central California to hang out with us on up here.
Love Thanos Copter's page.
To be clear, this is Josh Brown of Josh Brown Customs, and I am Brick Something of the Brick Something channel. What's up, man? And he is back. Welcome. Let's see. Brendan Higgins is here. What's going on, peoples? Mr. Ryan Clark is here. Hello to you, sir. We've got this guy, 1-6 shooter. Let's go. Trevor. I for some reason thought you'd be in Japan by now, but maybe not. And I'm incredibly jealous. Can I hide in your luggage? Larry's Geeky World is here. Hello, sir. GI Jetman is here. Vaz Zone, either Tiffany or Adrian. Hello to you both or whoever's there. Joe G. I famously, he was at that first Mythic Meetup, and we were right there. We were in the room, and we just didn't get to meet. So that's one of the things you don't do at a meetup. You meet people Mark R is here. Hello, thanks for coming through. Whoop, just jumped on me. We got Allison Troy, Retro Toy Princess. Hey, Allison. Solo Sinner is here. And it is, in fact, both. Hello, guys. And Kirby is here saying howdy. All right. Last but not least, what's up, Gabriel? What's going on, Gabe? Okay. So we hear the premise. As folks know, May 3rd, Saturday, May 3rd, is going to be the third annual West Coast Mythic Meetup up in the Sacramento area. Both Owen and I and and Jason A and James, a couple different folks are helping out with this thing. And we'll kind of take a look at sort of the event in a little bit. I do want to bring up the flyer just to get us situated. So let me go ahead and, sorry, real quick, you might feel a little quicker when I do it. Cool. All right. So first off, I got to tell folks, if you haven't already, please follow us on IG, the West Coast Mythic account. So far, we've got this sort of save the date flyer and this flyer where we listen to exhibitors. First up, I got to shout out, I will say, if you haven't caught on yet, these things happen because of the fans. Right, like Owen, a fan, and actually, helped out with some of what we now know as this thing called Mythic Legions back in the day. And a bunch of other fans got together and started it these last 2 years. I'm helping out for the first time this year, pulling in other folks. And so to keep in that spirit, these photos here are actually by a local dude out here in Oakland who folks probably know, Insightful Imagery, aka Mike McGregor. Will also be exhibiting at the show. Fine creator of all sorts of cool props for your photography. So these are his photos. Again, trying to make it a fan-based thing. And then over here is our sort of second save the date, giving you a sense of who's going to be there. So of course,
screenshots now.
Four Horsemen will be there, represented really by Nate, who we got to hang out with yesterday. If you missed that stream, check out the channel. And it was an awesome conversation with Nate. David Williams will be coming up from Arizona. Geekology will be there, one of the main sponsors and organizers. Jay's Armory will be there selling some goods, and we'll take a look at that stuff later. Mike will be there. Spiro Toys, aka Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, just sort of showing some mythic adjacent indie toy love. Angel Angel Nolasco, I already said Insightful Imagery, Tim Fung, Toy Fusion, Carver Customs, Owen Oertling, that guy, Brick Something, this guy, and then Cody Sebelis. So more to be announced. We still have a couple of tables. We're still trying to track.
Geekology is the local retailer, so he's got all the retailer waves and stuff. Yeah.
Yep, he will have. There will be plenty of Four Horsemen figs there. And then we are still trying to reach out to folks who have been. If you happen to see this, let us know. If you still want a table, we'd love to have everybody back showing off their customs, selling stuff. Let's all get together. So there we are. First off, Steph, how are we doing with outreach? Is there anything we need to know?
Well, I'm here at Dtour Customs. I'm wherever you want to be when it comes to the Mythic Legions community. So keep an eye out for my stuff, and I'm here.
And he's also here. Actually, let's take a look at the whole thing. So
that thing is awesome.
He is, first off, Dtour Customs, Dtour_Customs. You can see all his stuff. And I, if you don't mind, Steph, there are certain things that I'm just like, oh, I love it. If we could take a look at some of your stuff that you posted there, and then I'd love to hear what you've been working on lately.
Right.
But first, I guess, actually, before that, some context. How long have you been into Legions, and how long did it take for you to start sort of customizing and then moving into this place where you're building your own stuff?
Well, before I got into Legions, I was just, a regular action figure customizer. And around 2015, 2016, I caught wind of the line and got my first figure, Sir Ignatius. And I'd always been a high fantasy, medieval fantasy enthusiast. And seeing a line at the time was the only standout in terms of that genre. I had no, choice but to jump in and kind of do a deep dive in it. It just started manifesting into this deep love for these figures. I mean, I carry at least 2 or 3 in my my briefcase for work. I got tons of them at the office, in the car, in the bedroom, in the kitchen. I mean, they're
I love
everywhere.
that.
It is insane, but it is such a great line, and even better than that, it's run by amazing people. So it helps when the creators are just as good as the product.
Yep. So that's a while now that you've been sort of into the line and you know, making your own stuff. When did you start going to sort of the kind of meetups or shows? How'd you and what was that like for you to kind of turn it into an in real life kind of situation?
So I had been frequenting the local convention, you know, the toy conventions, and it just so happened one that I typically exhibit at ToyCon. The Horsemen were actually the resident, I guess, toy company that would get a table there. And I remember the first year that I'd gotten a table, I had a table right next to Trevor, and that's actually the first moment Trevor and I became good friends. And the Horsemen were one table over. So I had gotten into the line, and I looked at Trevor like, "Hey, man, this is great. We're right next to the Horsemen. A lot of the stuff that we're selling is Horsemen adjacent. This is great," because Trevor at the time was taking, you know, 10 years ago now, was taking stellar photos of these Legion figures. And fast forward now, look where he's at. I mean,
Yep.
He is premier photographer for the line and tons of your other favorite lines as well.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Everything has its genesis, but I just remember that year we sat next to each other and had a table next to each other, and it was just magical. It was like the best origin story for everything to come. And even as it is now, Trevor's my road dog. We go everywhere together when it comes to Legions.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So, okay. So you do have sort of like your product now that you're developing. I've seen you even sort of bring other folks' product to kind of share, you know, to kind of spread the love, I guess, about sort of like what are the toys. Yeah. And this is all your stuff. And like I said, there's things in here that I specifically want to look at. I'm going to jump over here because we know like this is again one of these beloved indie lines, the Plunderlings.
Yes,
But I remember first you seeing that ship as you were preparing for that airship, as you were preparing for this past year's LegionsCon. I'm just curious, when you started that, were you envisioning it for the Plunderlings, or was it just sort of in general?
it was just in general. I you know, the Mythic Legions line, as much as I love it, there are certain areas that they haven't tapped into yet. And I always find myself just thinking astray and kind of, you know, thinking outside the box in terms of what we can, you know, kind of introduce. And pirates kind of came to mind when we talk about, you know, accessories and props and, you know, the storytelling. So I'm just gonna make a ship. I haven't seen a mythic ship yet, so I'm just gonna make it. And a regular ship just wasn't enough for me, and I kind of wanted to make an airship. I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, and you know,
nice.
If you ever play in the installment, you'll see some of these in the games. But I just wanted to make something a little different so folks can enjoy and see a little something different. You know, I'm always trying to set myself apart when it comes to things that I make.
And you did it, because I don't remember seeing anything like this at all at the con. And since it's cool because, you know, I was wondering about it when you were first sort of sharing the designs, these cannons, right, sort of pointing downward. I was like, oh, what's going on with that? Like, what? Oh, once you kind of put the blimp on there, it's like, oh, got it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Helium tank and getting this thing off the ground, you know, that's the best I could do at the time.
I love it because you got your Plunderlings in there, and I know you've got other figs in here, but it's like they're getting ready for the Plunderbeaks, I guess, right?
Yes.
In addition, there's all this, you know, all the other stuff that it sort of pans over. So this is your thing, right? You bring a bunch of this stuff. This was at LegionsCon, but you know, since we're talking about different cons, LegionsCon isn't the only one you do. And you were telling me you go to a couple of different shows, right? And are you bringing this much sort of inventory? And
it's probably never as much as LegionsCon. LegionsCon is the biggest show. I have the biggest space and
gotcha.
the most time to prepare for it. So, you know, other shows like I do ToyCon every year. They usually do maybe 1 or 2 shows, and I always have, you know, table space there. But the inventory is never as big as LegionsCon.
So like there's that stuff, and then there's this that came up. You know, we've had Cosmic Legions for a little bit now, but we have yet to get anything like the equivalent of, say, like a steed. Well, actually, that's not true. We've seen it solicited, but we don't have anything in hand. So it's kind of neat to get like a vehicle, like a custom vehicle like this thing. And it looks like the video is gonna fight with me as far as it working, but this is really cool. This is really cool. What was there? It is. Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Awesome.
How did you come up with? How did you end up saying I want to do it and then come up with the design? Is there something you were looking at, thinking about?
Well, most of my workflow consists of, a seed. I'll have like an idea for something. I'd be, chopping it up with somebody like Chris Ferrione or Anthony Halseal or even Trevor, and I'd get an idea, and I wouldn't have a particular design in mind. I would just pop my ZBrush open and just start freestyling, and whatever I end up with. But this was one of those situations. I knew I wanted a hover vehicle with heavy artillery, and this was the end result.
Pretty cool.
Right, everyone? Owen? Like, it's like, it's kind of cool that we're in this world where you could be a fan of a thing and you've got like this back catalog in your brain of all the cool fantasy, sci-fi stuff, and you can actually create something, right? You can turn whatever's up in here and make something new.
Yeah.
I love this. It's really cool, man. It's a cool concept, but it's not just for Cosmic. I love that you like, you give you give options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just fun, man. It really just embraces the fun nature of our toys and our toy collecting. It's cool. Have you seen any cool, like, folks who have picked this up and done some cool things with it?
I mean, the Low Fidelity Customs. He's like a master at turbo dork paint, so he has a lot of this iridescent blue and purple, and just his cosmic repaints have just been incredible. When you get a chance, check it out. Low Fidelity Customs on Instagram.
Low Fidelity Customs.
It's like an toys. It's really good.
Yeah, I appreciate the recommendation. That's kind of what we do here. But as far as you mentioned Turbo Dork, funny enough, they're actually sponsoring some of the stuff that we're doing at the meetup, right? So it really is about reaching out to people. They send a couple of sets because I totally know this because I've seen some of their great customs, like that Kitty Pride. I'm sorry, I'm multitasking here, trying to find maybe your hover bike, but they're sending in paints for us to do a paint contest. So there's like that kind of cool like activities that we're going to be having, and it's kind of neat to see folks like Turbo Dork throwing down and supporting what we're trying to do here. So is that kind of a thing that you've seen at different meetups? And again, all I know is this one. Like, what are some of the cool things that you'd highlight from other experiences at different cons or meetups that we should consider?
Well, I think your typical con, pretty standard, but the meetups are special. Meetups can either be a couple of friends getting together, getting some food, bring some customs to kind of mess around with, bringing toys just to mess around with, just general hanging out. So I think it's a great way to, forge those bonds that, everyone has an online presence, but when you see someone in person, you get to sit with them and listen to them and really spend some quality time stress-free. It is awesome to put faces to names. I mean, every mythic related convention is like a party. At the end of every LegionsCon, you find yourself almost on the brink of tears. It's like, all your friends are leaving, guys from Europe and the East and West and South and North and the underworld, wherever they're coming from. It's a convergence point of creativity, a friendship, and the common ground in this line. It's not just about the plastic; it's about the people you meet along the way. So it's really, really cool.
So, what are the meetups that you've been to, like specifically meetups versus shows out there on the East Coast?
So it's a little different for us here. We have so many shows that we tend to just converge after the show. We get some dinner or some food or some tacos and some beer or something like that. So I think, and this is just me, really in awe of what you guys are doing with this Mythic Meetup. It looks like it's a convention almost. it has that quality. You know, they got the tables, you got the sponsors, the horsemen will be there themselves. So I think it's very unique, and you guys are pioneering something very exceptional for the West Coast, where you guys often have the conventions that we have on the East Coast.
Well, we'll see. We're trying because truly, I feel like the Sacramento area, you guys, Owen, I know you're getting together. Like they do get together. You guys got like a painting.
Yeah, Jason Elbrecht runs a paint night. I'd say bi-monthly kind of a thing. But yeah, I think this idea that normally it's at these toy conventions and you're having a meetup afterwards. And it's interesting. In the past few years, it's been over at Toy Fusion, and so we've had the meetup before their toy flea market, like the day before, and then the day after was the toy flea market. And we're doing the same thing, but it did in a different location. And I think Andrew's still having his toy flea market the day after. So in a way, we're kind of doing it the opposite way. But it almost sounds like we might need to make sure we've got a place to go after the event, you know, to keep the party rolling, right?
That's right.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, man. And I appreciate the folks up in Sac kind of getting this going. Like, you know, I'm 2 hours south of them, and they're just, you know, I'm in the Bay Area proper, and we just don't have anything like this yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, going up there to kind of see what that scene's like, and we'll see what we can do out here.
Well, we really appreciate your help too, because in our little chat we started, it needed that the go get 'em attitude that you brought to it, and, you know, just started making things happen. So
I was talking with Iz, and I was like, oh, so do I just? I was like, yeah, just help out. And I was like, all right, guys,
that's what we need. Yep.
How about this? So yeah. It starts with just folks coming together, you know, fans of a thing and trying to make it happen. So I'm glad I had the wherewithal this year to not be so shy like the last two. But this stuff, man. So you're, again, back to your stuff. You're creating props. You're creating vehicles. I love that, and it's just kind of cool what you end up adding to this world that we love. You know, we love Mythic Legions. We love a bunch of other figures, but here you are, kind of like, I'm just going to create these other things for more folks, you know, for folks to kind of build their worlds and stuff. I'm curious, when you design, do you design with like a figure in mind, like that the Vorga on it looked kind of perfect, or do you just go?
I tried to make them a bit more homogenous, where you can kind of use them for the bigger figures or the smaller figures, somewhere in between. A little bit of versatility, so you're not finding yourself buying too many scaled props where your shelf is just overloaded. So try to one size to rule them all most times. But sometimes you can't always achieve it, but where I can, I try to make it work.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think here's Rocco sort of showing it off with some, like, of course, like key characters in there, and you can kind of, I love it. And I love where we're at now, where we've got the people making, you know, props, but then there's also this like, well, let me put lights in it and let me do this now. And it's kind of wild. And I love that aspect of the community where it's really sort of encouraged to, you know, build out this world in this way. It's cool stuff, man.
Absolutely.
I know this is, you're saying this was after LegionsCon. You were, you know, doing that sort of LegionsCon come down, and you were starting to figure out what's next. You're still selling some of this stuff, different colorways. I love this kind of stuff, just weapons and then magic. This stuff was particularly cool once we got Poxus, right? We started to see that in the world, and it's like you see there's a need, right? And you're just here.
Is that a laser cut piece?
No, it's just a regular acrylic disc, and I inscribed it.
Oh, you scribed it, hand scribed it.
Well, not hand scribe. I used I got the design in on the Cricut.
Oh, okay, on the Cricut. Okay,
and I just etched it right in.
Yep, very cool.
Found a pretty good Elven font, and I was able to just. That's actually my name typed in that font just over and over again.
You're tagging. You're tagging in Elven.
Yep.
I've done that with the Urabesh from Star Wars, and that's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
and just, getting it around the figure like that and the way the light plays with it. This is so great because, obviously, as folks have shown you here, part of this is not just the playing with the stuff. It's now the toy photography and the diodes. Like, it spawned this whole like little world around it. And
It's
actually at the
world building.
meetup, what's that?
It's world building. Absolutely.
Yep. And that's kind of what we're going to try to embody at the meetup, because we are going to have that sort of that painting contest. We're going to have a little bit of a dio contest. And this guy up here is going to be one of the judges. I don't know if you want to just tease a little bit about kind of like what you all were thinking with that.
I'm pretty sure we were landed on like a 12 by 12 by 12 size. My thought was like if we had shelving, just stack them in like a IKEA cubicle thing or something. But just so we can fit them all in. But then, yeah, I'm sure we'll come up with certain criteria, just coolness factor, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I volunteered to be a judge because I used to teach sculpture. So
yeah,
it was like kind of a university critique thing going on.
So I'm really hoping that folks hear this and like see that maybe there's a way they can come, maybe just come to check out and buy some stuff. If you're like, been building dios, or, you're into painting, come through, you might be able to like meet other folks who do it, but also just have some fun. It's show off your stuff. So
I think it's, both of those things are going to be, almost a way to almost have a gallery show there, which is something, we probably should think about in the future, is like just, covering the walls of an empty space with this stuff would be pretty cool.
It reminds me of the way I've heard Trevor, Jeremy, and other folks talk about those early LegionsCons, right? I think Jeremy was saying like it really was intended to just sort of be almost an art show. Bring your stuff, bring your customs. And then it's evolved into this thing as the hobby and the community has evolved. And so like we're kind of
hearing customizers who went, to these shows just to show it off, and then everybody wants to buy it. So I think that's kind of how it evolved, right? Like, well, if everybody wants to buy it, we might as well have like sales tables to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're trying, and these are all offerings. We'll see, who's available and interested in doing it, but please, consider it. More of your stuff. I really I love the creativity. And again, I do love that you're able to, each one of these I still see as sort of like these artistic objects, and I'll stare at them. But the idea that you're producing enough for others to kind of buy and put them on their shelves or include in their photography is awesome.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you go big. And so this was 2 years ago now,
so cool.
where you're like, I'm going to create a catapult that is functional and apparently maybe a little bit dangerous.
Very, yeah. I actually had to scale it back because it was a bit too powerful, so I had to release some of the tension on the release.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. But one of my coworkers actually brought his kids that LegionsCon, and they wanted to test it out. And thankfully, I didn't, make the projectile too hard. It actually hit the little girl in the face. I'm like, ooh.
Oh.
It was as lethal as I intended it to be. So that was pretty
well. Good on you for the engineering. Okay, let's get to something that you're kind of working on. This is the newest stuff, right? Tell us a little bit about this.
So this is post LegionsCon, I tend to take a break and kind of just unwind and kind of reset creatively and kind of give myself some time to crank out some new stuff. And this was one of the first designs that I came up with for the spring. Dragon themed. We just came off the Bayathier extravaganza. This was like a life-changing event for most folks and most folks' bank accounts as well. So, in honor of that, I decided to come up with a Dragoon design armor set to pair with Legions. Just a little something to kind of get folks excited and keep them pumped for the arrival of Bayathier.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I thought I had the image ready that you shared with me, but let me make sure. Yeah, I think it's this one. There you go. So this is a little bit further along than the image that you had on IG, right? So you've got the whole armor set now. So help me out. what parts are you looking to make available for this? You got like.
So for
it's like-
Legions, it'll be the pauldrons, the torso, the gorget.
Sorry,
greaves.
I don't speak medieval.
I'm
What was
sorry.
that?
The neck armor, the chest armor, the shoulder armor, the arms, the folds, the hips, and the legs as well.
Wow. So
Is
it's like
that built on a spawn toy?
Yes, that's the Raven Spawn.
Nice.
McFarlane Raven Spawn. I use that to kind of scale everything. It's actually one of my favorite figures too. So what I like to do also, I like to make versions of the same armor for multiple different toy bodies. So
Okay.
you see
Yeah.
this
Yeah, yeah.
Legions, you see this on McFarlane figures, maybe even some Marvel Legends. One in particular is the Marvel Legends Null. It has like this nice, long, slender physique, which is like perfect for exactly what I was going for. This kind of almost a Dark Souls kind of aesthetic, very gothic, very dark and pointy. So
that's cool. That's super smart because you've got your idea for like an armor and a character, and you can make it so that folks, depending on what their favorite body is or whatever they're trying to fit in, can work this thing into their line. Which figures did you say you're doing? You said a Marvel Legends, Legions, McFarlane,
Raven Spawn, and the 1.0 Legions Nightbody.
Got it.
How are you scanning those?
This one I use this app called Polymaker.
Okay.
It was
Just
very
take
difficult.
lots of images and then
get
it stitches them together. Or?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much, and you can kind of see the goopiness on the underside because that's where the light couldn't reach.
Yeah,
But I just need it as a reference for the sizes. Most times when I print these things, it's usually trial and error to resize it. So maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 iterations, I'll get it right.
Nice.
Also, I don't use the traditional back pegs on the armor. So, like for instance, if you got a guy like Sir Uchak here has the holes, I use a system of straps on the pauldrons, so you can kind of use it for any figure. You're not bound to just Legions. You want to throw it on something else. It's a system that works outside of the traditional Four Horsemen Mythic Legions format.
I like that.
That's cool, man. Because again, now you're customizing, you're creating parts for a couple different lines, but you're essentially thinking like you're making toys. You really are making toys, which is it's awesome. Cool. Let's check in with the chat so far. I've shined some of these up, but just so you know, folks clearly are excited to see you here. In addition, where was it? Once we started talking about that hover thing, people were feeling that. Where was it? Where is it? Sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Skies of Arcadia. Is that a reference that I maybe missed?
Yes. That's a great game too. Great game.
I love it. Is that? Do you think it's in reference to the hover bike or at all?
It was reference probably the airship.
Gotcha. Cool. Cool hover bike. Folks are familiar with low fidelity. I love the color choices when I went over there and took a look. He absolutely knows how to make that purple pop. The turtle space rider was dope.
Thanks, Baz.
This we will definitely get to. There are so many shows, which is part of a little bit of West Coast envy, but that's okay. We're gonna try our best to do more out here. Hey, look at this. There's actually going to be a meetup after ToyCon New Jersey on Saturday. So if you're there, you planning on heading to that, Steph?
Yeah, Brendan's one of my favorites in the community. He's doing a little barbecue, so I definitely want to chop it up with him for a bit.
Very cool. What's up, Punk? These swords from LegionsCon 24 are straight fire. Those are the flaming ones. Let's see. I love the way the etching picks up the light. Yeah, those effects.
Thanks, Ryan.
What's up, Andrew? Steph is here to let us know that she loves us. Hello.
Hey, Steph.
Your Dragoon is very elegant.
Thank you,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Look at the detail. That's what I was, thinking as you all were talking. By the way, to maybe subtitle for anybody who doesn't know, they're asking about how did you scan that Spawn figure in, and that's hence the goopiness that these guys are referring to. armor's so amazing, keeping an eye on it. Filigree. I forget. That came up on that thing and people were like, filigree. But yes, definitely that filigree is super ornate. Were you looking at something as reference, or you just kind of going?
I kind of just freestyle. Reference kind of sculpting is not my strong suit. I kind of just go with what I feel. Some trial and error here. I'm a big symmetry guy. Things have to be balanced. Things have to be a certain shape. I like vertices and sharp points. So I kind of just take all of that and I just kind of go with it. So something like this, it went through maybe 5 or 6 different versions until I finally settled on what actually felt pleasing to me. I just go with my gut.
I'm jealous.
My
work is very reference based.
Yeah, that's actually my biggest weakness. So references, couldn't do it.
Man, I love it. Whenever someone breaks out, Josh says "gorget," you know they mean business. And yeah, Steph is saying when chatting with someone that breaks out, appreciating details and knowing what a gorget is. I know it'll be a hot and heavy conversation. They're my people. Yeah, man. That now is a thing that I know. But yes, I love it, man. And so let's talk again about kind of what you do. You do, like I said, you'll bring your stuff, but at LegionsCon, I saw that, you kind of were highlighting some other toys and sort of mythic adjacent. How do you decide? How does that all work out? I was actually kind of curious about that.
So that's the awesome part about the community. It doesn't just impact us here on the continental U.S. You meet folks in China, you meet folks in Europe, and everywhere. So Jay Kai, we've been friends for a really, really long time. And I said, hey, I have some table space at LegionsCon. If you got a project you want to, display, throw it my way up. I'll throw it on the table. I'll make a nice display for you. And with that, Axie Toys and Yoto Toys, they're all a community over there. And I think it's important to note that the Chinese Legions community is incredible. They love Legions just as much as we do, and they do they do their meetups, they do their conventions, and unfortunately for us, we don't have the access they have to the manufacturing resources. So the stuff they're cranking out is insane. But yeah, we touch bases, and the language barrier doesn't exist when you got a nice little translator. So Jay Kai and I always have space for him at my table, and he always sends some stuff over, and we try to get that work exposed as much as possible, because again, they don't really have the presence that we have over here. So it's important to kind of give them that outlet whenever I can.
That's another thing that sort of is being embodied with what we're doing here. It's like just like when Toy Fusion was there, like I remember even Iz had his table and had a bunch of different toys, many by Four Horsemen, many not. I remember like going last year and picking up some Zezre stuff from someone, some old Motu classics. So there's a little bit of that there. If you're thinking of coming through, it's definitely of course, Four Horsemen heavy, but if you take a look at what's on screen right now, there's so much happening right now with toys in the sort of fantasy world that could go really well with mythic. In the sci-fi world, they could go really well with cosmic. So on May 3rd, I'll actually be working the Spiro Toys table, selling some Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. We're at LegionsCon as well, and it's like I think at least he was initially planning, he being Wade from Unparalleled Universe, who is not too far from here, sharing some table space to kind of just show off a little bit about like having Odious presence, his own little indie line. He was at LegionsCon this past year. Things are shifting. He's got a little bit on pause with his next planned Kickstarter because of the whole tariff situation. But I think he'll still be dropping by. But just getting that vibe, right? It's like we love toys, and look, this works really well with this character, and of course, Jay's Armory will be there selling custom weapons and all of that stuff. So Trying to channel that energy, Steph, that
Absolutely.
you and the community bring in it. It's
And
cool, man.
it's funny you mentioned Wade because I think Wade is a great example of, you know, the general collecting community that wasn't really in tune with Legions, and just how awesome the Legions fandom is. It's very unique in the sense that it's built on a foundation of friendship, love, and you know, sugar, spice, and everything nice, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, as opposed to some other communities that are a bit more, cutthroat, for lack of a better term. So,
Yeah.
to much to most people's surprise, this community is super tight, and it has its roots in a lot of the great energy that the Horsemen have pumped into it, and the community being creative and connecting the way they do. So,
Yep.
when he saw how awesome LegionsCon was, it changed his perception of it, and now look, he's trying to engage even more, which is
Yeah.
incredible.
Nah, and he's not the only one. I know folks who showed up to that last LegionsCon for the first time, like I did, and they're just like, man, we're gonna go every year, and they're not even like really buying a lot of the figures. They just love the vibe. They love seeing that spirit and on the fandom, and that those Yoda toys, by the way, those are the ones that I saw those on your table. I was like, oh man, let me check these out because I'd seen them before, and man, instantly sold, ordered. And so you were doing your job there, and I was telling Thanos actually when I came back, I was like, yeah, I saw those. They're awesome. But yeah, so he's into that. And Steph agrees about the Mythic Chinese community. Super innovative in their custom sculpt ideas, and they come up with, plus they're super kind, nice, and thoughtful. It's apparently the Mythic way. All right, so let's shift a little bit and talk about the shows that are kind of part of your world. So I know you're at LegionsCon. You've been there since 2018. Is that right?
2018, 27. So I jumped onto so incidentally, the very first LegionsCon, that was that meetup. That was that show I had mentioned about being next to the Horseman and next to Trevor. That was actually the very first one. And the next one was a virtual format because of the pandemic. So I was a part of that. I had a breakout room, and it was very well run by Jeremy. It was a big hit. And the third one was when we actually went back to the physical in-person format. But yeah, I've been at every single one since the virtual.
Okay, so that's kind of just, I don't know, at least for me, that's like this, okay, that's the beginning or an end of the season or building up to it or whatever. And then there's this stuff in between. And my dream is to have a couple in between LegionsCon locally for us to kind of share, like talk about how excited we are about whatever else is coming. And you get hyped to go, And so there's that. I said maybe one, maybe two. You mentioned this one, which is IshCon that you do with them.
May 16th to 18th. Yep.
Heavy, that's coming up, but heavy again, Legion's presence as well as all these other indie toy spirit. I see some Savage Crucible, some Brutal Realm, of course, Motu, some Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. We even got some Demon Slayer up in here. So there's that cool indie vibe. But again, Four Horsemen are there, and they've been there, as well as the fans. There's ToyCon New Jersey, which Jay Shot, I saw his live coverage, and I saw him and Machu going to your table and sort of showing off your stuff. And so that's
local family. Yep.
Love that. So that just happened. And you'd think it would stop. I said one or two in between, but you were also doing this at Shop the Curiosity.
Yep.
Where's Shop the Curiosity?
That's in Connecticut, I believe.
Okay. How far was that for you, just to get a sense of like, oh, I drive to Jersey, or I go to IshCon, or I go to here?
So locally, it's usually on average, about an hour and a half drive when I drive to Jersey. IshCon is going to be the bigger drive. That's in North Carolina. So that's going to be a trip. But I wanted to show my brother Ishwa some love. That show has actually been, it's relatively young, and it's really, really growing. So similarly enough, where there wasn't really a huge Legion's presence show-wise in the South.
Yep.
And with Toylanta and now IshCon, there's more opportunities to have these meetings and these shows to kind of really draw out the local Legions fan has been a huge hit. Jordan and Van are at every one of these shows. There's a sea of purple. These guys are there, so it's a good testament to the success of these local shows and these street teams being able to kind of capitalize on the fandom.
Yeah, I love that. So you got like a couple hours you're driving, or I know maybe 3 to 4 hours. There's also ZoloCon going up.
Yep. ZoloCon is fun.
Yeah, it's just like, and so you've got a couple of these different shows, and it's the opportunity for you and the PGG crew. You got Bill Dorkler, you've got Steph hanging out at these, and you all can kind of meet each other and connect, which is awesome. So that's what we're chasing, right, Owen? Out here on the West, that's what we're trying to make happen. And like I said, I think we're doing some cool stuff. So let's switch gears a little bit. And Owen, just to give folks a sense, I know you've been at the last two, kind of teased that you had some background with the studio. Let's actually start here in general. Can you share a little bit with the folks that background that you were telling me just a little bit ago before we started?
Sure, I'll try not to drag on too long because it was a long time ago, it seems now. But basically, after I got out of undergrad, I moved to New Jersey, and I was in upstate New York and an art major, and planning to go to art school down in New Jersey at Montclair. And I think I had read one of the Toy Fair articles or something, or it might have been He-Man.org that kind of revealed that they were in New Jersey, and I was a big fan of them through the 2000X He-Man stuff going on at the time, and I think they were just ending that, starting to get into the DC stuff with Mattel, and they had started their Fantastic exclusive line with the Minotaur. So I kind of cold called them. I looked them up on the internet, like whitepages.com, and said, hey, I'm an art student in the area. I'd love to learn how to, be a toy designer, and, maybe I can help you, in some way or another. And they were nice enough to kind of invite me in. And I did, they taught me how to mold and cast at first. And so I molded and casted a run of their Minotaur busts that they did as one of the things they were selling with that first, it wasn't a Kickstarter at the time. It was just kind of a grassroots thing. And after that, I just was so enthusiastic that I think, and I just told them, if you ever need help with anything, I would be happy, more than happy to help out. And so over the next 10 years, I freelanced for them, mostly doing molding and casting work, always looking over Eric's shoulder, sculpting, learning anything I could from them, watching. At the time, they were working in clay, and CB and Jim were running machining equipment to machine out the joints and the accessories and everything. So learning anything I could through that, and just doing the dirty work that I didn't really like, all the molding and casting stuff, but I did it to have an eye in the studio and watch them work. And after about 10 years, I was, it was just freelancing. So it was never a full-time gig. I did everything from installing kitchen cabinets to working on props and stage work for Fashion Week and Broadway. I did, just freelanced handyman stuff. And I also taught sculpture at the university level after my master's. So nice. I was just kind of doing anything to pay the bills within the arts. Being a sculptor, a hands-on sculptor, I, knew the wood shop. I learned, a lot of digital stuff. Early on, the early digital stuff they were doing, we were 3D scanning one side of a clay body for Eric and 3D printing the left side by, flipping it around. And then Eric would detail that crudely 3D printed piece. So I was learning 3D scanning. I was learning 3D printing. I taught myself how to run a CNC machine and laser cutters and all this other stuff. And so that Star Wars display you have up, that was through the Four Horsemen. And, we they would do, random work, and they have friends. That's Bill Raleigh in the back, one of the Four Horsemen's oldest friends. He was an intern at McFarlane Toys. And until just recently, he was, pretty high up at Hasbro. And so we did that display work for Hasbro for that huge TIE fighter that they released.
Right.
I remember it was that, or we also did the Rogue One display for them, and I got to meet Mark Boudreau, the guy who designed Falcon, through that work, and he was that pretty cool to meet. Awesome. And like that little guy there, that was like a 3 3/4 inch Hasbro wax sculpt I did to try to get into Hasbro, but that was kind of a losing battle too, because they get all of their artists from college program locally. So like I came in as 10 years out of my undergrad, wanting to kind of intern basically for them. And they're like, well, you didn't go to school. What do you mean? Yeah. But I've been at the Four Horsemen school for X number of years.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of this was just my random work. The skeleton on the left was for George Gaspard, who is now at Four Horsemen Studios, and they did the Skeleton Warriors Kickstarter. So that was
it's also this one here.
Yeah,
I love this.
That's incredible.
And that's early clay work. That's all stuff that I was doing to learn castelline clay and how to sculpt and that. And then I basically I was there on and off for 10 years. I was teaching on and off for 10 years. And then I met my current wife, and she needed to get her PhD. So she applied to a program in Kansas, and I just moved to her with Kansas to Kansas because I basically had been doing the same thing for 10 years on and off as freelancing and part-time. And during that time, I learned ZBrush. So I had taken an initial ZBrush class with Jim Preziosi in New York City at SVA. And Jim is not a digital guy at all. So he was kind of just sitting there on the computer like, Owen, what are we doing? I don't get this. But I learned the basics, and then from there, I needed that push-off point to say, okay, learn this stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was it. And while I was there, I did a lot of freelance work. I worked for some people in New Jersey, doing very quick 3D sculpts for them, getting my chops, and then basically by the time we were ready to leave Kansas, because my wife was done with her PhD, she got a job here in Sacramento. And right before that, a friend from Mattel that we had met through my work at the Four Horsemen called me up and said that he was at McFarlane Toys now, and they needed a sculptor. So now I'm at McFarlane Toys as a full-time designer. And, I got to work on a lot of that superpowers stuff, and I do a lot of prep work for the factory. So I do a lot of articulation stuff. I do a lot of checks on other people's stuff, and make sure it's ready to go. Communication with the factory, project managing now too. I manage other sculptors, so it's a totally different ball game now than when I started.
It's a dream. That's a dream come true right there.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, it's a great job. I'm working on sports now more than superheroes, but and I'm not a sports guy, but I really love my job still, and it's all still sculpture. I'm just looking at different reference material and still having a lot of fun with it. So
yeah, these superpower stuff, man, super fun. And are you a DC guy? I'm curious because
I wasn't a comic book guy at all. I was a toy guy since I was a kid.
Oh, sure.
I lived in upstate New York and didn't get any TV channels, so like Fox would come in intermittently, and so all the good cartoons were on Fox, and I occasionally would catch something. But I was a huge He-Man fan. I had superpowers and Batman toys growing up, through Batman '89 and onward, and and then working for the Horsemen, I got to know the whole slew of DC characters. Because being in the molding and casting shop, I could tell you probably still like what bodies each character was built on, you know. And after a while, I would do like what we call the B sheets, so the design sheets to prepare for the next wave. And I would know the whole, you know, catalog in my head from being in the molding and casting shop of what parts we had and what, you know, what we could switch out to use where.
And that was when the Horsemen were working with Mattel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
this is
really
kind of my
cool,
second
man.
go at the whole DC thing. But it was really good working on all this stuff because, you know, I kind of knew the whole catalog through that. And yeah, pretty cool. And
Very cool.
That's a DC Comics cover, so some of my work is on that cover, which was pretty cool.
I love that they did that, man. And then you've got, of course, you're doing some work with some of their figures. This is a figure that you actually sculpted, right?
Yep. Yeah, we actually used a lot of the digital assets, you know, to kind of make the base sculpt, you know, the volumes and stuff. But we changed everything. You know, that's one of those weird things with the digital assets is you can kind of use some of it, but it's a lot of work to get it to actually be usable. And most of the time you just kind of use it as reference, you know, for what you're doing.
Oh my Owen, I gotta say, this is, I mean, I had no idea you were the one behind this. These proportions are easily some of my favorite.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
I'm more in tune with the larger scale figs, and this is like right up my alley. So wow, my heart is thumping.
Thank you.
That's cool.
Very incredible.
And like you said, you've built up all this experience with like molding, casting, you know, and you're looking over Eric's shoulder when he's sculpting, picking up what you can. Now you're sculpting figures. You're also working on soft goods and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's weird. Like I was always a jack of all trades, master of none kind of a thing. And over the years, I've tried to focus to get, you know, into figure sculpture. But my wife has a PhD in fashion, and so we have an industrial sewing machine. So basically, I had her teach me the basics, and you know, so now once it was started with Dune 2 when we did Dune 2, and we needed to make all those cloaks for cheap.
Yeah.
You know, the first wave of Dune I don't think sold great, but we wanted to do more Dune, and so we reused a lot of parts and made what we needed, and then you know, instead of making huge tools for these big cloaks that they were wearing, we did soft goods cloaks. And then I kind of brought in the idea basically from the Horsemen's community, this idea of the wired capes and everything. So if you want some good wired capes, if you can pick up some of those Dune characters on clearance, they're great like cloaks for Mythic Legions.
I was surprised, man. I got the Cheney because I can't not get a figure of her because she's awesome. But and then I ended up going back and getting Paul, and they have these really cool. They're not just cloaks. There's like a wrap around it, but I was really impressed by those figures. And I think in general, it's as you're picking up, like it's really cool what your experience has been, and you're also a fan of this stuff. The fact that you've been at every Mythic Meetup that we have so far, the last two, and now you're helping organize it, I think is really cool. And I think it's a perfect example of kind of what I was talking with Nate about yesterday. Like I've known Nate's work for years before I knew Legion's stuff, right? I'd seen his stuff, and then I didn't think that I'd have an opportunity to just like hang out and say hello and talk to him about like Lego of all things and some other stuff at this meetup. So I just want to throw that out to folks. Come through, hang out, meet everybody. You'll get to talk with Owen about all his experience. You'll get to talk about Nate and David Williams, who's now like found himself designing Mythic Legions or Cosmic Legions characters, and it's just
often than not in the Horsemen's community. I was a big fan before I got started. Nate, I think too, was doing fan artwork and got picked up, and David Williams, absolutely. We hung out at the when he was here for the first Mythic Meetup, and it's just cool to see all that. And I think that's how the Horsemen have run the business since their beginning. If you think about it, they got into the scene through that 2000X He-Man stuff, and they were working for Mattel, right? So the draw of their company was partly that almost viral, before viral was a thing, right? Marketing, where they were in the Toy Fair magazines as like this little ragtag team. And that brought legitimacy or like a hardcoreness to what they were doing, because they were McFarlane sculptors now sculpting for Mattel. So bringing that kind of edginess into what Mattel was doing, and they continued to hire them for that same reason, right? Like, you know, Mattel has sculptors. They could have sculpted DC superheroes if they wanted to, you know, but they saw value in continuing to hire them for their not just their skill, but what they're bringing through basically the community, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny as you're mentioning like the nature of the Four Horsemen and sort of like their almost like DIY spirit, right? Like we're of a similar myself and Eric and that sort of groups of folks were kind of the same age, and you know, I'm the same way. People are wondering, like, what you're doing like a YouTube thing, and people know me. They're like, you used to be in a band and you toured this and all these different things. You said graphic design, and you had a company. Like, what's that about? And I had a good time talking with Jeremy a couple weeks ago, sharing like, oh, we have a similar background. Like, we taught ourselves how to do this HTML thing because there was no class on how to develop websites or design. And so there's a similar like DIY, indie, punk rock, you know, like take records and put them on turntables and make music kind of mentality. And so when people are like, wait, you're now helping with like this Mythic Meetup, it's all about this, right? It's this, if you build it, they will come. And I've sat around and wondered, like, I see Steph's posts and all these folks like, oh, we're going to this show and we're doing IshCon. I was like, man. And then at a certain point, it's like seeing you guys do it the last 2 years, it clicked. I was like, no, we just got to get that DIY spirit, just like the Four Horsemen themselves do, right? They were like, they worked at McFarlane, learned a lot, and said, let's do kind of our own studio. And, you know, to his credit, McFarlane Toys wouldn't exist if he was just fine being an employee and his peers of Marvel Comics and just staying there, right? No, they said, let's do our own studio. And then eventually he was like, let's do our own toy company. So there is a little bit of that vibe. And I throw that all out there because that's what this West Coast Mythic Meetup, and it seems like all the meetups are all about. It's like folks taking the initiative. We know we have a shared love for this thing, right? This idea of these toys and the whole world that comes with it. Like, Steph, I'm going to make my own toys. Hey, check it out. You know, and I want other people to see what folks are doing in China. Check out these toys. There's that shared vibe. We just need to create the spaces for us to do that in real life. This online thing is cool. I love it. I love seeing folks every week. But the idea of like when I was at LegionsCon and getting to like meet some of these people that I watch regularly, you know, in person, it was just really, really cool. Or like, you know, I got to hang out with Steph on the channel, the other Steph, on the channel, and then see her in real life. And there's just something about that. So that's my big pitch for, hey, why don't you all come out to hang out with us at the West Coast Mythic Meetup, right? I think, and I just want to share a little bit.
I'll bring some basically early prototype stuff from the first Mythic Legions thing that was going to be Glios and a smaller scale and blah, blah, blah. So I got to sculpt the first round of weapons, design and sculpt. I think I did the swords, the knife, the spear. CB sculpted the shield, and a colleague, Shane, sculpted the axe. So I've got the initial styrene prototypes that we made for that, and one of the figures that's articulated differently. So it's just an interesting like part of that history that you'll get to see there. And you know, just that early, that was probably what, more than 10 years ago, right? Because Mythic is 10 years old now. So yeah.
That's awesome. Like
one of the things that you'll see that. And then you also have Nate there with all of his artwork.
Yes. And, you know, you get to talk to him about it. I got to sit down with him yesterday and just barely scratch the surface of the many things that you could talk to Nate Barch about. Here's the location again. I want to share with folks, like, this is a, you know, real nerdy space. It seems like a mainstay up in your area, the Galaxy Game Cafe, where, you know, folks,
we have the paint nights for. So and it's a nice clean space. It's got a huge Star Wars collection. all over the space, in all these details with like the history of Star Wars toys, which is awesome.
Yeah, here
And
it is.
then,
They've got like a
lots of
full-on
places to
display.
sit, and like I think the last place we've been having it was pretty cramped. And this, you're going to get to spread out. You're going to have to get to, there's seats for you to sit down and chat with people. We're going to have that painting competition so you can sit down and actually do something. And we might even be able to get Eric Treadaway on a Zoom call during it. We haven't nailed it down, but I've reached out and to him, and he said maybe if I've got time, we can set that up. So that would be pretty fun, where you can ask him questions directly.
Yeah, we're trying to really make it a cool, awesome Legions event in that way. So if we can make that happen, awesome. But of course, hey, Owen's going to be there. Sir O will be there. Nate's going to be there. Iz can tell you some history about starting up the studio and some legal aspects. Get them talking. But you can kind of see this is the venue, right? It's plenty of space. We do have a couple of 3-foot by 5-foot tables still available. Just throw it out there. We are going to be charging $60, which really isn't a whole lot, I don't think. And if you, for some reason, end up selling making more than $250 in profit, we said, maybe give us a $20 tip, right? So it's real affordable. We want folks to be able to be there. But check it out. It's a cool space. This is what we're working with. We hope you all can, join us for that. And just to highlight, I know I don't need to show you this, but there's this company called Four Horsemen Studios that'll be there. And they're going to have a lot of cool stuff.
They will be selling stuff.
They will be selling stuff. My understanding is was on somebody's show yesterday, as what I heard, and straight up said these will be there. Whereas me and Nate yesterday were like, we were being shy about it. Both Nate and I were like, well,
I really, really hope we get those, because I really want one of those.
They're incredible.
Yeah.
I opened mine for the first time yesterday, and I was like, playing with it, and I got a gift from somebody, and I now have to get a second one. So if they are there, great.
Just maybe good.
But there's going to be plenty.
It's interesting. I remember talking with Eric early on in that first wave about wanting things like that. Just basic, plain Jane, like the skeleton was one of my favorites. Just the full, head to toe skeleton, head to toe Bavarian, and that sort of stuff. And it just wasn't in the budget, right? They needed to get a certain number of things with a certain number of parts.
Guess what's in the budget now?
Yeah,
but yeah, so they're popping up at these sort of shows all over. And again, Toylanta, I know isn't close to you, but you're up there, Steph, on the East Coast and the North, and then Toylanta, they've got things going on there. So there's opportunities for them to go hang out, get some Legion stuff, and get Barbarians. So this could be the place, folks, if you're interested in coming by. I will say the show is only going to be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So it's a shorter show just because of what's going on with the venue. But to Steph's point, we're going to have to figure out what to do after.
Yeah.
To continue the party. But so those guys will be there. I'll just maybe highlight a couple of other things. We talked about Geekology, who is one of the main organizers and sponsors. They'll be there, and exhibitors. They'll have all your Legions needs for whatever reason. If you're like, but what about the other stuff, including retail exclusive stuff? They will have it. So if you're just looking for, some Horseman figures, this will be the place to go. If you're more adventurous and want to get some weapons, unfortunately, we won't have some Dtour Customs flaming swords or anything like that. But we'll have a couple of great stuff by Jay's Armory. In fact, last year they had a exclusive weapon that was designed by Emil Wickman that they printed and sold, which is kind of cool, like his own unique character. And I don't know that we're going to get anything like that this year. Not sure. But this guy is coming all the way from his neck of the woods. Yeah, Brian Lynn's going to head out there. and we'll not sure what he'll have, but everything he has is good. So come through and just meet folks. Again, if you're not going to buy, just come hang out, get to meet all the folks in the community. I heard from I was hanging out with Curtis on a stream last night, and he was like, well, my daughter's wedding is the same weekend and it's like an hour away. So he might even be coming by. I don't know if he's going to be in a tux, but he might be coming by. And of course, AWOC will be there. And just a quick highlight, Toy Fusion folks who we are normally at the last 2 years, they are going to have their monthly toy swap meet, which you heard referenced earlier. And so folks are staying an extra day. If you want to look at other, toys and do a little bit more shopping, you can do that. So,
yeah. And that's a great flea market too. I go as much as I can.
I'm jealous.
It's huge. It's like basically 3 parking lots and an extra space, and the store's open. Good. Everybody's got good deals there. Everybody's willing to work with your budget. It's great.
Yeah. So, hey, you can make a whole weekend out of it, folks. I think it's going to be really, really cool. Again, I was saying I'm jealous. Sacramento is about 2 hours away. It's still cool. I can get there on a weekend and do the thing. But my hope is to, meet folks, talk, and let's see if we can also maybe do that sort of second stop point in Northern California between LegionsCon, Mythic Meetup, and one other time before we go back to LegionsCon in November. That's the plan. And got some folks talking, potentially out here in the Bay Area, in the East Bay. And so, just throw that out there because, again, if you build it, they will come is the idea, right? And that's what this is about. We always hear like it's about the fandom being one, super cool, super friendly, fun to be around, so that you want to work with folks. And you've got folks like Steph, who's like, I'm a fan, I'm into this stuff, I'm customizing, but I got some ideas. What about this? What about this vehicle? What about this throne?
Yes.
And I think that is so unique, and that doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Like it happens when people get together, share ideas, and it's fun. It's fun. So I'm looking forward to it. I really appreciate you both for hanging out with me here on the Brick Something channel as I pretend to do whatever this thing is, which is it's one of those things where it's like I never envisioned that I'd be doing like a weekly show that's basically like a TV show kind of. But here we are. I appreciate you. Is there anything that you both want folks to know about besides what we've already talked about? Anything like any places people should follow you, or what you got, Steph?
Well, I got ToyCon coming up in a couple weeks, IshCon 2 weeks after that, San Diego, of course, and then long road to LegionsCon. But if you guys ever need anything, feel free to hit me up on any of the handles, Dtour Customs on Instagram, Stephan Delatour on Facebook. I'm always awake. I don't sleep. Let's chat.
And he'll teach you about medieval armor and weaponry and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I got a lesson today. How about you, Sir Owen?
Yeah, I mean, I just have my personal Instagram and Facebook page that I just post work on, occasionally a family thing, but I'm not very good at self-marketing. So you can see what I'm working on my Instagram. It's just Owen Oertling. And yeah.
If you can't make it to the meetup, I highly encourage you. I know we're really trying to push this idea of people coming together, but like we live in an age where we can connect with people fairly easily. Like you all just said, hey, message me. And I used to be real shy about that kind of thing. And now it's like it's unbelievable. Like I was talking with Nate about his artwork yesterday. I was talking with Jeremy 2 weeks ago. I've spoken with Trevor, and like just making friends along the way, because ultimately that's what it's about, folks. As far as I go next week, I'm basically going to be using the weekly stream to do a little bit more build up for this Mythic Meetup next week. Another East Coast, West Coast. Representing the East Coast, we're going to have Steph, Orkin, what's going on, and West Coast, we're going to have Michael Duggar, whose photos are gracing the flyers. So we're going to do a little bit more talk and look at some of their stuff. I appreciate everyone who came by today. And then also, someone said this earlier, Justin, I didn't ignore you, but he said, hey, Brick, go on Geek Dad Live tonight if you can. They're going to talk about Lego and we'll need your expertise. They got you. We've been talking about it for a little bit, a couple days now. So that is the plan. We will definitely, I don't get to talk enough Lego, but yes, doing that. So it's shortly after tonight in about an hour over on the Geek Dad Live channel. Steph, Owen, thank you both for hanging out.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming through. Rick Jones is saying he might be there, which is awesome. Yes. I'm hoping maybe, we're not sure. I know Tomas was saying maybe not, but hopefully.
Tomas,
so it'd be great to see everybody, man.
Cool hanging out with him.
Cool. And if you missed it, down right here, you can go to that. That'll take you to a document with all the links so you can see these guys' stuff and everything else we looked at. Yep, we'll talk Lego. And thank you all so much. Here's where I pretend to be professional and bring up, like, where's the production crew? Oh, yeah. Can you cue the music? Have a great weekend, everybody. And I think I pressed something. I pressed this. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Owen. Appreciate you.